right away, as soon as this guy comes up, David's probably aware that this is not good news because
Sure.
his clothes are torn. There's dust on his head. That is the Old Testament. Clear sign for mourning.
Right.
And if you watch Gone with the Wind, the black clothes, that's the sign of mourning, right? Well, in the Old Testament, it was torn clothes and dust on your head. That was mourning.
Right.
And so this guy comes running up, and David, I'm sure, immediately knows this guy does not have good news for me.
Right, absolutely.
Welcome back to the Physics of Faith podcast. I'm Tommy.
And I'm Tim.
And we are continuing on through the life of David. And we are, as I mentioned several times, it would take a long time to go through the entire story of David. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit. Last time we were together, we were going through 1 Samuel chapter 24, where David basically spares Saul's life. Saul goes into the cave to relieve himself. David cuts off the corner of his robe and says, "Hey, here I am, not trying to kill you." And Saul moves on. All right, well, thanks, but nothing's changing.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah.
And so we're going to skip ahead basically to the end of 1 Samuel. And so, again, because really we're going through the life of David, and so we've obviously touched on Saul, obviously, because that's a big part of David's story here. And so when we first started this series, we kind of got into how Saul became king. And so now it's been Saul's and David's relationship. So, but just to kind of go over briefly what happens in 1 Samuel 25 through 31. So Samuel dies. The prophet Samuel, who anointed Saul, and then later anointed David. He passes away, and so there's kind of this time of mourning over the land. And then David, he spares this man named Nabal. So Nabal, he was this basically very wealthy farmer. He sends some servants, say, "Hey, can we have some food and some refreshments and some shelter?" Basically says, "No."
Yeah.
Take it or leave it. And so they kind of had been watching over him and kind of protecting him. And so they basically going to go kill him, and his wife finds out about that. Wife brings them food and basically, luckily, spares Nabal's life. So they don't kill him, but Nabal is distraught by this. He ends up passing away, and David ends up marrying Abigail, which was Nabal's wife. Then he spares Saul's life again. The Saul and his army, they're encamped over this field. And God put them in this deep sleep. David goes down, stands right next to him. Saul's spear, I'm guessing this is the same spear that he's missed, that he stinks at throwing. It's stuck in the ground right next to David's head, right next to Saul's head. Saul takes up the spear, he walks away with it. Again, spares Saul's life again, and he shows him, like, "Hey, Saul, got your spear, could have killed you again."
Yeah. Well, he probably didn't want to try to kill him with the spear because it doesn't have a good track record.
Maybe it's not. Yeah, it's hit the wall several times, so it's probably not sharp or pointy at this point. So he spares Saul's life again. He befriends Achish, which is the head of Gath. Kills a lot more people, slaughters a lot more people. Saul consults a medium here, and he speaks to Samuel. Which is, again, that's definitely a story that we could go into. But again, this is more about the life of David, not the life of Saul. Right. But it's a very interesting story. So I strongly encourage you to go back and read through that.
Absolutely. Bring a couple commentaries on that one.
Yeah, for sure. So David destroys the Amalekites, and the Philistines. Basically, they've continued to war with Saul and his men. And long story short, the Philistines, they kill Saul's sons, including Jonathan. And Saul, seeing all this, he falls on his sword and takes his own life. So, and that's basically the end of that's the end of Saul. Anything to add to that? Mention?
No, I think that's a good recap, and it's going to set us up nicely for 2 Samuel chapter 1.
Yeah, so, just to recap. So the Philistines have killed Saul's sons, and Saul has taken his own life, so they're all now dead. So we pick it up in 2 Samuel chapter 1, and we'll start here verses 1 through 16. After the death of Saul, David returned from striking down the Amalekites and stayed in Ziklag 2 days. On the third day, a man arrived from Saul's camp with his clothes torn and dust on his head. When he came to David, he fell to the ground to pay him honor. Where have you come from? David asked him. He answered, I have escaped from the Israelite camp. What happened? David asked. Tell me. The men fled from the battle, he replied. Many of them fell and died, and Saul and his son Jonathan are dead. Then David said to the young man who brought him the report, How do you know that Saul and his son Jonathan are dead? I happened to be on Mount Gilboa, the young man said, and there was Saul leaning on his spear, with the chariots and their drivers in hot pursuit. When he turned around and saw me, he called out to me and said, What can I do? He asked me, Who are you? An Amalekite, I answered. Then he said to me, Stand here by me and kill me. I'm in the throes of death, but I'm still alive. So I stood beside him and killed him because I knew that after he had fallen, he could not survive. And I took the crown that was on his head and the band on his arm and have brought them here to my Lord. Then David and all the men with him took hold of their clothes and tore them. They mourned and wept and fasted till evening for Saul and his son Jonathan and for the army of the Lord and the nation of Israel because they had fallen by the sword. David said to the young man, Who brought him the report? Where are you from? I am the son of a foreigner, an Amalekite, he answered. Oh, through 16, sorry. David asked him, Why weren't you afraid to lift your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed? Then David called one of his men and said, Go strike him down. So he struck him down and he died. For David had said to him, Your blood be on your own hand. Your own mouth testified against you when you said, I killed the Lord's anointed. All right, so longer reading there, but so let's dive into this. So right away, as soon as this guy comes up, David's probably aware that this is not good news because
Sure.
his clothes are torn. There's dust on his head. That is the Old Testament. Clear sign for mourning. You know,
Right.
and if you watch Gone with the Wind, the black clothes, that's the sign of mourning, right? Well, in the Old Testament, it was torn clothes and dust on your head. That was mourning.
Right.
And so this guy comes running up, and David, I'm sure, immediately knows this guy does not have good news for me.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and so he does come up, and David asks him where he comes from, and he says, I escaped from the Israelite camp.
Yep.
And he's like, Tell me what happened. And he basically explains, hey, Saul and Jonathan are dead, and, many people fled, many of them fell, many died. And David says, well, how do you know
Yeah.
that Saul and Jonathan are dead? And so So the young man tells him this story, and the story is interesting.
Yeah, and you read some commentaries on this, and I think it's mostly accepted that this guy probably made up this story.
Well, it seems to be in like direct, not and like it doesn't have to be. It could be true,
Yeah.
but it might not be true.
Right.
And like in 1 Samuel 31:5, it says that the armor bearer of Saul saw that Saul was dead.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So
and he too fell on his own sword and died with him.
right, exactly, right. So the idea here is like, so what happens next? Is Saul suddenly like, oh wait, I'm not dead yet?
Yeah.
And now lean on his spear, and then this guy comes along
Yeah.
and kills him? Like, does that seem very likely?
Right.
What seems more likely is that he assumes that if he takes credit for he does come across Saul because he does get his crown, right?
Right.
If he takes credit for the death of Saul, but also he does it in a merciful way,
Yeah.
then he'll ingratiate himself with David,
Right.
and be like, "See, look, I'm on your side. I'm with you. I
Right.
killed the king."
Yeah, and so if this story is not true, and this young man, I mean, it was not a boy, but this man is making this up. That was probably his thinking. It's like, hey, I'm going to ingratiate myself to David, the new king of Israel. I'm the one. I'm on your side. I helped Saul. I didn't kill him out of anger. He was hurting, and he asked me to.
Right. Does make for an interesting commentary on like
Yeah.
assisted suicide.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and this is like David still holds this as killing the king.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like he says, look, he's dying anyway.
Yeah.
He wants me to put him out of his misery.
Yeah.
David doesn't necessarily want Saul to suffer,
Right.
but who are we to put him to death?
Yeah.
Is kind of David's thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and so let's look at it a couple So let's say that that this guy makes the story up, and obviously it obviously doesn't end well for this man. Now, if this is true, you know, and there are reasons why that could be, you know, and you read the Bible and people like, oh, say it's full of contradictions, but when you really understand it, there are a lot of things that aren't said, you know,
Right.
and so it could be that, you know, I don't know why his armor bearer would not have been with him. But, you know, maybe this happened before the armor bearer sees that he's dead. And then we don't really know. Right. But it's also, it would be very telling for Saul to fall at the sword of an Amalekite, because if you remember when we first started this, the Amalekites, those were the ones that Saul was supposed to go in and just to take them all out.
Yes.
To kill everything, everyone and everything, not leave a not leave a single living thing breathing.
Right.
And he does most of that, but he brings back the king, he captures the king, and he leaves the livestock, you know, alive. And so how fitting for it would it be for Saul to fall at the hands of an Amalekite, the ones that he disobeyed God by not fulfilling what God told him to do?
Yeah, I think even further here with this, he's the son of an Amalekite sojourner, right?
Yeah.
Or an alien is how they term it. It's an interchangeable word, right? And the what's interesting about that is that means, like, essentially at the time in which the men of the Amalekites should have been wiped out by Saul.
Yeah.
Instead, the people of Israel allowed them to sojourn into their nation and settle.
Yeah.
Right? And then now he is the son of that, and he identifies himself as that.
Yeah.
He is an Amalekite. Now, there's also a lot of parallels with the Amalekites about, you know, there's a really good commentary on this, like what the Amalekites represent.
Yeah.
Is very much paralleled with our flesh.
Yeah.
And like how they did things. But they were very much anti-Israel. Mm-hmm. They were sworn enemies of Israel.
Yeah.
And they didn't worship the God of Israel.
Yeah.
Right. Now, the word sojourner is one that's being thrown around a lot these days. And this is a very interesting bit of study on what that meant to be in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
So this is the son of an alien. Now, sojourner is intended to be a temporary resident of the land. That's how Israel understood it.
Yeah.
But they are to be fully, like, they don't have the same rights. That's another part of this. But they are also expected to fully participate in the covenant behaviors, right?
Right.
And so here's the son of this Amalekite who still calls himself an Amalekite and wears that as his badge of who he is.
Yeah.
Who should have abided by the covenant, and because of that, should have been afraid to raise his sword against the king of Israel.
Yeah.
Right? The idea that he would kill the king of Israel showed that he was not of the people of Israel.
Yeah.
Right? And I think this is something that it's a very interesting study. It's something very interesting to kind of think about, but for David, like, that's enough for him to know, like, this man is not on our side.
Yeah.
Whether he did it or not, he took credit for it at least.
Yeah.
Whether he did it or not.
Which is bad in itself.
Right, yeah. He does not hold the same values that we hold.
Right.
He's not a part of the covenant that we are a part of, and he has no place among my men.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and so, you know, you can understand why David would mourn for Jonathan. They were great friends. But you would think, it's like, finally, we can stop running.
We stop looking for those spears. You know?
But that's not David.
No.
David is not, because he knew, like, this is not how it should have ended for Saul. You know,
right.
You know, he was never wanting to take Saul's throne. He was just preparing to ascend to it when the time came. He says, but this is not how it should have ended for Saul. Basically, alone on a field, basically alone at your own sword. That is not the dignified way for the king of Israel to go out.
Yeah, there's no glory in this, and it goes back to David's mentality when he fought Goliath. This is not about me. This is not about Saul. This is not about Saul's son.
Yeah.
This is about the people of God. And what does this mean for God's reputation among the other nations, right? That we would be defeated like this, and that we would have shame like this.
Yeah.
Like, this is not befitting the God of Israel.
Yeah.
And that's like, it all comes back to, is God being honored in this?
Yeah. Yeah. And so, it sounds harsh, but, so this Amalekite is put to death because of it. But, at the time, it's like you live by the sword, you die by the sword. That was the way of the Old Testament, basically.
Well, if you didn't have a problem taking credit for a killing,
Yeah.
Like you understood that this was the way of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, so let's move on to verses 17 through 27. David took up this lament concerning Saul and his son Jonathan, and he ordered that the people of Judah be taught this lament of the bow. It is written in the book of Jashar. A gazelle lies slain on your heights, Israel. How the mighty have fallen. Tell it not in Gath, proclaim it not in the streets of Ashkelon, lest the daughters of the Philistines be glad, lest the daughters of the uncircumcised rejoice. Mountains of Gilboa, may you have neither dew nor rain. May no showers fall on your terraced fields, for there the shield of the mighty was despised, the shield of Saul no longer rubbed with oil. From the blood of the slain, from the flesh of the mighty, the bow of Jonathan did not turn back. The sword of Saul did not return unsatisfied. Saul and Jonathan, in life they were loved and admired, and in death they were not parted. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. Daughters of Israel, weep for Saul, who clothed you in scarlet and finery, who adorned your garments with ornaments of gold. How the mighty have fallen in battle. Jonathan lies slain on your heights. I grieve for you, Jonathan, my brother. You were very dear to me. Your love for me was wonderful, more wonderful than that of a woman. How the mighty have fallen, the weapons of war have perished. So David is so distraught and laments the death of Saul and Jonathan that he writes basically a song. Not only David is a real Renaissance man. Not only is he an incredible warrior, but as we knew from one of his earlier introductions, that he was a very skilled musician. He played the lyre, and now we know he's a great songwriter too.
Excellent writer, yes. Just go look at the Psalms, and how many of those are his.
And that was one of the things when we were getting ready to prepare for this. I wanted to kind of relate some of the Psalms to the times of David, and so in a couple weeks that we are going to read one of the Psalms and how it relates to a story in David's life. So we haven't really done that with everyone, but we will have one of those coming up in a couple weeks.
Yeah, but it is, to your point, it shows that David is about more than one thing.
Yeah.
Right? But all of the things he's about point back to God.
Yeah.
Right? It's always about glorifying God. It's always about, doing what is right, honoring those who God would have honored. And it's really interesting. Like he hearkens to, in this song, he hearkens to the good things that Saul provided the people of Israel.
Yeah.
Because he did so under God's direction. And it was because God put him in that place that they were able to do that, right?
Yeah.
So he says, hey, let's remember the good about Saul. Let's remember the good about Jonathan. There was much more good about Jonathan, I think.
Yeah.
At least in character.
Mm-hmm.
Again, he comes back to this idea of like we don't want our enemies to rejoice. Don't let them know. Yeah. Don't tell them, because our enemies don't need to rejoice or think that they have the upper hand against us.
Yeah, that's tell it not in Gath, proclaim it not in the streets of Ashkelon, lest the daughters of the Philistines be glad. That's exactly what you're talking about. It's like, hey, this is not something that we spread joyfully.
Yeah, but something I didn't write down in my notes, but that jumped out at me when we were reading it just now. In 17 and 18, he says he took up this lament concerning Saul and his son Jonathan, and he ordered that the people of Judah be taught this lament of the bow. And it's written in this book of Jashar, right? Mm-hmm. So what did Saul ask David? Let not my name be stricken.
Yeah.
Let not my family be forgotten.
Yeah.
the first thing David does is write a song about Saul and Jonathan and says, everybody's going to learn this song.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So David, again, keeps his word
Yeah.
and honors those who he believes God wants honored.
Yeah, one of the and you bring that up, and not in my notes, obviously, but one of the 10 Commandments is to honor your father and mother, right?
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes people often get that confused with having to, obey and be kind to your father and mother, and the whole idea of that of that commandment is for adults.
Yeah.
Children obey your parents. Adults honor your father and mother. Now, obviously, Saul was not his mother or his father. He was his father-in-law, and he loved Jonathan like a brother.
Yep.
And so, this is kind of a good example of that. Like, David had every reason to, spreads terrible things about Saul and make sure that he was not remembered kindly, but he honors him. And he does what Saul actually asks him to do. He says, "Hey, as you mentioned," and he honors them. And I think this is an excellent example of that.
Definitely a trait that American politics needs to pick up.
I would say, yeah, you're right. So what you're saying is the new guy should be kind and say nice things, not constantly blame the guy before him.
It would be nice to hear. It'd be nice to see some people work together. That's all I'm trying to say.
And we say this. We're not talking about one single person. This is
for the entirety of my lifetime. Yeah.
Yeah. That's how you get elected. You trash the guy before you. Right?
That's right.
Anyway, so and it's really interesting. He's the first part of this. A gazelle lies slain on your heights, Israel. A gazelle is what, interestingly enough, a gazelle was known as a beautiful animal, and I think in the book, The Song of Songs or Song of Solomon, written by, unironically, David's son Solomon. That's what he's talking about, a beautiful woman, and he refers like, you're like a gazelle, your neck is like a gazelle. So he's calling Saul beautiful here, and as we know, like Saul was he's a good looking guy,
Sure.
So it's interesting that you see all these little details, and again this wasn't just a haphazard. All right, we'll write some nice words about. Here's a nice eulogy about this guy that I didn't really like. So David really went out of his way to write a beautiful.
Saul was king. Saul died.
Yeah.
The end.
Well, and it's important here to remember that, yes, Saul's life did not end pretty, but he was the anointed king of Israel by God.
The first.
He was the first. Yeah. They asked him for a king. He's like, all right, this is the guy, and. He would not have who would have been your first choice. He was a lower ranking person. He was from a low family. And so while his end of life was great, Saul deserves some credit. He did some good things.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, his tribe maybe wasn't the most well-known tribe, but he definitely had the appearance of this is what a king should look like.
Yeah.
And again, we see this as a parallel. You have Adam, who is like the pinnacle of man.
Yeah.
And he starts out in a good place, and he has dominion.
Yeah.
And what happens is he's disobedient.
Yeah.
And he loses dominion.
Yeah.
And so what happens is he brings in a humble servant, savior, and king in Jesus, who is that second Adam.
Yeah.
And we see the same thing with David. David is humble, he's young, but he is not without his strength.
Yeah.
Right? And in that obedience and that humility and the willingness to lay his life down and not to try to protect his own life or to try to do what he wants to do, he becomes the king.
Yeah.
Right? So we see this parallel of what the Messiah is going to attribute. Unfortunately, I think the people of Israel misunderstood which attributes God was foreshadowing.
Yeah.
It was the humility. It was the things that they didn't value as opposed to the conquering strength.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And then one last thing to mention here. In verse 26, he says, "I grieve for you, Jonathan, my brother. You were very dear to me. Your love for me was wonderful, more wonderful than that of women." There have been people who have insinuated that David and Jonathan were more than just friends. You know, that there was this homosexual aspect to them. I mean, and that's something to say. Your love for me was wonderful, more wonderful than that of women.
Yeah.
You know, and we talked a few ones ago when we talked about David and Jonathan. These were very, very good friends. These were friends closer than brothers. And so there is nothing in here to suggest that they were any more than good friends. It sounds weird, you know, I will admit, but it's also, I think it's a lesson for us that friendships are meant to be special. And the love that we have with our wives, sexual love with women, is different than love we have for our friends. There are different words, you know, there were different words for love, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, so here's the thing. I think the people who read a sexual relationship between David and Jonathan do so because they read it with a modern lens.
Yeah.
Right? And in a modern era, especially in the United States, we cannot separate the concept of love and sex.
Right.
Right? In fact, we can't even separate the concept of liking somebody and sex.
Yeah.
Sex is not something that is cherished, and it's not something that is, as God intended, assigned to be between one man, one woman in a marital covenant.
Yeah.
Now, if you go back to this time, they understood what sex was for.
Yeah.
Right? And this is the thing. David found more fulfillment in the loyalty of his brother than he did in the love of his wife.
Yeah.
And we talked about that a little bit. Like, his wife did things for him. You know, Michael did things for him and tried to protect him and tried to keep him.
Yeah.
But we see later she also nags him a little bit. Right?
Yeah.
So there's this, and we talked about how she wasn't necessarily drawn to him because of his virtue.
Yeah.
He was the heroic guy. She was smitten with him.
Yeah.
You know, they were both very young.
Right.
This is probably very youthful lust kind of to a degree. And Saul kind of capitalizes on that, right?
Yeah.
But what Jonathan offered was a bond of love.
Yeah.
So when somebody of this era would have read that, they would not have read sex into this. They would have not read sexual attraction into this. They would not have done that because that would not be the case for something like this. It would not be the tradition of the Jewish people. It's silly and it's absurd and it's revisionist because you want to see your own things written in there. And I think, you know, I think enough scholarship has been done to prove like this is not the way that this is not how this is supposed to be. And I think we need to be careful how flippant we assign sexuality or sex to relationships or to love.
Yeah.
Love is not about sex.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, we'll give Michael credit. She helped him escape.
Yeah.
You know, but, you know, Michael was Saul's daughter.
Yeah.
Jonathan was Saul's son.
Yeah.
And yet, when David was trying to figure out why Saul was trying to kill him, he went to Jonathan. He didn't go to his own wife. I mean, he may have, and we don't have record of it, but it's like, he didn't go to his own, like, hey, what's your dad's beef with me? He went to Jonathan, his friend, not his wife, you know.
Yeah. I mean, now, granted, Saul's probably not talking strategy with his daughter.
Very, very true. Very
but
true.
we see this in other stories. Like, the daughters are loved by their fathers.
Yeah.
You know, there's a different relationship between the father and daughter than the father and son.
Yeah.
And, like, if a daughter sweet talks her father enough,
yeah,
she can get him to tell him something.
As we see in the book of Luke, we see the king's daughter want the head of John the Baptist, and he got it. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
So that's kind of the end of chapter 1. We're kind of breaking this episode up a little weird. So we're gonna dive into just the very early beginnings of chapter 2. We're gonna read verses 1 through 7. In the course of time, David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I go up to one of the towns of Judah?" he asked. The Lord said, "Go up." David asked, "Where shall I go?" "To Hebron," the Lord answered. So David went up there with his 2 wives, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel. David also took the men who were with him, each with his family, and they settled in Hebron and its towns. Then the men of Judah came to Hebron, and there they anointed David king over the tribe of Judah. When David was told that it was the men from Jabesh-Gilead who had buried Saul, he sent messengers to them to say to them, "The Lord bless you for showing this kindness to Saul your master by burying him. May the Lord now show you kindness and faithfulness, and I too will show you the same favor because you have done this. Now then, be strong and brave, for Saul your master is dead, and the people of Judah have anointed me king over them." So David basically, Saul has died now, and as David always does, he first inquires of the Lord.
Yeah.
He's like, this Saul's reign and David's reign beginning kind of end and begin with kind of a fizzle.
Yeah.
It's like there's not this grand mourning period. Oh, the king has died. Let us mourn. Now let's make David the king. It's like, oh, he's dead. All right. Somebody else buried him. All right, David, you're king now.
Well, it's interesting here because he's anointed king of Judah at this point too.
Yeah.
Right. We see if you continue in this chapter that Abner finds one of Saul's other sons and has him anointed king over the rest of Israel, right? And we see that kind of division there, right? So we're still not seeing like a clean succession.
Yeah.
Right? There's still this animosity and there's going to be some civil war because of this. But what we see is David is consistent and saying those who honored Saul, I am going to honor them because they did what was right and they served their master as they were supposed to. They did what they were supposed to. Something that I thought was interesting and just kind of an interesting aside. The men who honored Saul with burial are the men of Jabesh-Gilead.
Yeah.
This is the town that gets punished in Judges chapter 21 for not joining a war against the Benjamites who had done something evil. The Benjamites had done this evil thing. As it happens, Saul was a Benjamite.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a kind of this interesting, maybe it shows the connections of the different houses and which ones were loyal to each other for different reasons.
Yeah.
But then David turns around and blesses them for now honoring a son of Benjamin.
Yeah, we skipped over this. This was in chapter 31 of 1 Samuel. But basically what happened, the Philistines, they kill Jonathan's sons and many of the other soldiers. Saul kills himself. And so they come to strip the dead and they find Saul. They're like, "Ha ha, we got the king here." Yeah. And they basically they cut off his head and they hang up his body. His dead body. And I mean they dishonor him as much as you can dishonor him. And then it says in chapter 31, verse 12, all the valiant men had marched through the night to Bethshan. They took down the bodies of Saul and his sons from the wall of Bethshan and went to Jabesh, where they burned them. Basically, they went like, this isn't right. This is not how we do this. And they marched up, they took him, and they gave him a proper burial and a proper send-off, as should have, not what the Philistines were doing.
Yeah, yeah. So David here, though, starts his reign, though. As he honors them, he's also inviting them to support him.
Right.
He's like, I am now the king.
Yeah.
Right. The people of Judah have anointed me king over them. So now be strong and brave.
Yeah.
Right. So like he's kind of inviting them to be strong and brave on his behalf going forward.
Right. Yeah. And, as I mentioned when we started this, David right away, he inquires of the Lord. He doesn't, he doesn't like, oh, Saul's dead, I'm king now. He doesn't seize the throne. He does like, all right, let's go on. Let's take it over. He's like, all right, God, what do we do now? What's the next proper steps here? And he also knew that the anointing wasn't going to happen while he was amongst the Philistines. So he takes some time. He does what God calls him to do and asks him to do, and then they move on.
Yeah.
And gets anointed. And I think that the showing kindness after somebody passes away. I think that's why even today, that's why we put so much stock in funeral visitations and funerals and because like there is something to be said about the friends of the dead, the name of the dead, going along, but there is something to, may not have been the best nice person, but let's be honoring and kind at least.
Yeah, absolutely. So now when we're here at 2 Samuel 2, David is now back amongst his people.
Yeah.
He's in his home essentially in Judah. He was able, like you pointed out, leave the Philistines. I don't know if we touched on this too much as we started this episode, but
Yeah.
like David was working with the Philistines.
Yeah.
He was going to have to fight. Like there was going to be a fight basically, and he was going to have to fight against the people of Israel.
Yeah.
Except the Amalekites came in and like kidnapped his wives and took all of his stuff.
Right.
And so David left the Philistines to kill the Amalekites.
Yeah.
And then comes to find out the Philistines fought the Israelites,
Yeah.
killed Saul. And who tells him that but an Amalekite?
Right.
Right? So
Yeah.
there's a little bit more there,
Yep.
a little more meat on that bone, but kind of an interesting thing. And so, yeah, so now David is going to start allowing God to establish his kingdom.
Yeah, and so that's kind of where we'll end this and kind of pick up next time. So again, this kind of ends the story of Saul, which is kind of where this whole series is about the life of David. We kind of started with the beginning of Saul's reign because I think that was important to just establish that. So now Saul has gone on, David shall be the king of Israel, and
Yep.
our next several episodes are what happens next.
Awesome. I look forward to it.
All right, thank you for listening.